we are not going to go for the whole round table again. I'm sorry for that. Actually, you might introduce Denis Biennial, who is, by an extraordinary chance, a second case of scientists working on corals, which is a great luck. Corals are heavily represented in this meeting. And we have the great honor to have Mani, who has been the curator of a show in the Biennale preceding ours, and we learned a lot from her, and we will hopefully learn. And I really hope she will not abandon us mid-year. That is going to prepare the show. So, Mani, everyone knows you, but you might want to introduce yourself, and then Professor Denis. You have to push your button, that's the whole condition.
Just say hello to everybody. And I'm teaching actually in Kaohsiung in the interdisciplinary arts department. So it's an honor to be part of the workshop. Yeah, thank you.
Professor Denis?
Yeah, so I'm Professor Denis. I'm from National Taiwan University. I'm a marine ecologist, working also on coral reef, as you mentioned. I'm also teaching a lot because I'm in a university, so I'm teaching a lot of classes on ecology, and especially about actually, effect of climate change on coral reefs. I'm mainly work around Taiwan.
So, thank you very much. We engaged into a second part of this meeting. This morning, we had another seminar of 3 hours with another group, this time doing what I call a crash test of a project and show. Crash test is what banks are submitted to when officials want to check if it's bankrupt or not, and at which point they get bankrupt. So I propose we did this morning a crash test of a project of a show. Does it make any sense in Taiwan? Is it the notion of planet understandable, etc.? So we had a 3 hours crash test, which we still have to decide with Director Lin and Charlene if it's positive or not, but I think it was a very efficient meeting. And today we have to get into the second part of this 4 questions which I presented to you yesterday. I'm not going back to the 2 first ones, but I remind you that yesterday, for those of you who were not here, we discussed again the notion of conflict between planet in quotation marks. Again, planet meaning just a way to avoid the idea of a simple division. So people have different views on the same world, and I will explain again why it's so important for the 2 other questions. And then we insisted a lot on the question of a disconnect between the 2 forms of life world in which we inhabit, one of which is the house, the sort of country that we recognize as our own, and the other one is more hidden. It's the country we live from. And this morning, Professor Wei reminded us that I had used this very interesting test, which is the overshoot day, planet overshoot day. I don't know if you know this one. It's a calculation made by an NGO of the time it takes for some country to live out of its own biological resources. It's very small, but it doesn't matter because the argument is very simple. Tu as là-bas comment ça fonctionne? Tu vas te mettre devant l'écran le tour. The idea is simply that you calculate the biological budget, so to speak, of a country, and then you ask the question, how long does it take for a country to use up its own budget, so to speak? And what is interesting here, first, I have to apologize, but Taiwan is not in it. So, if you know anything about it, but it's interesting, it's not in it. I don't know if it's not in it because of a usual United Nations problem, or if it's not just because the data have not been assembled. Professor Dennis might know more. The geographer this morning, he didn't know.
First option.
Sorry?
The first option.
But probably the first option. But what is interesting is just, don't worry too much. These diagrams are not very useful anyway. It's just a way to dramatize the situation, which is that, can you show it, Martin?
Yeah. So that you see like you have January to December, and here you have each country, the dates. Yeah. No, let's keep it like that, don't worry, because we just, it's very, then it's the last slide we need to show, so it'll be fine. So you have January to December here, you have each country, the dates when they actually spend the amount of resources that they're supposed to have, according to what their resources would be able to, what they are supposed to be able to afford. That didn't make sense, I would say. You have the calendar, and you have the dates of the different countries, and that's the date when a country has consumed all of the resources which were available to it. So I think I can read, and I'm not sure that here is Canada, and we see that it's in March, so that means that in March of the year, Canada has spent all of the resources that it was supposed to have for the entire year, and that means that all the rest of the year, it's living in a debt in terms of resources.
It's another way of talking about the debt, but it's also another way of talking of what I mentioned yesterday, the disconnect between the world we live in and the world we live from. Basically, the United States live on the 3 first months of the year, and then the rest of the year is actually plundering resources everywhere. And since it would be really interesting to have the data for Taiwan, but it doesn't matter. So can you go back now? The two next questions are the difficult ones that we want to work on today. And when I say work on, it's really work on paperboard. So It was my idea to have a paperboard, is not ideal.
Yeah.
So let me imagine again. You have this overshoot day. You know that your country lives on the, let's say, first 3 months of the year, and the rest of the year is actually plundering other countries. We suppose that the data assembled by this ONG is not NGO, is not too clumsy. And then you ask the question, if I want to move my date into, let's say, instead of March, June, what will happen to the other countries which I will stop plundering? A very simple example was shown 2 weeks ago by the French president when the French complained to Brazil because Brazil let his Amazonian forest burn. And then President Macron, who is not an ecologist but he's a good politician in a way, says that look, we the French are responsible for some of that because we buy the soybean from Brazil. To which the Brazilian answered, if you stop buying the soybean, what will you do with your cows? And what will we live from? So we want in the show, and that's, I'm coming to the notion of diplomatic encounters, to find a way of dramatizing and specifying this question, that if one country begins to lend, as we say, which means in this little exercise to lengthen move the date forward of the overshoot day, what sort of consequence will it have for the others? And and how the others will react. So that's the first point I wanted to make to explain the controversy triggered by landing on Earth. If one country begins to land, it basically modifies the world economy of all the others, which is of course the reason why nobody moves, because the moving is so terribly difficult. But we want to simulate the world in which countries begin to land, which means in the logic of this overshoot day game, that ideally, in 1 millenary probably, or I don't know when, the countries will have actually be able to live until 31st December. When people talk about what it means to have a sustainable development, that's what they mean. They mean that the land on which we live and the land out of which we live are actually coinciding in some way. We see that how far we are from it. There is one country actually which is doing it because it's so poor, it does not actually reach something. This one here?
C'est l'Indonésie.
C'est quoi?
Indonésien.
Indonesia is very odd. It's an extraction. Indonesia is greatly distracted. But we don't know exactly the logic of it. But can you go back to the so that's the first point. We want to dramatize what it means to land, which means again landing in the sense of coinciding the two definitions of the language. Now, diplomatic encounters. We don't have a Chinese translation yet. This time again we started to translate the title and we had at the initiative of Director Lin, a long discussion again on the title. It's still not settled. That we will have another discussion on diplomatic encounters. Let me explain what it means. And here I have to do a little detour through my own earlier work on engineers and innovators. People in STS know that very well. When I started to work with engineers, I was very interested in the fact that they could not understand why people did not like their innovation, and wrote a whole book on the subject. So they said, my innovation is fabulously good. It should have lots of advantages. How come they are not spreading? And their answers, which is not very sociologically informed, was to say basically people resist innovation. They are backward. They are ignorant. They are in the threads of ideologies, etc. And of course the whole work we did in sociology of science and engineering was to say maybe there are excellent reasons why people resist new innovation. And that's where the idea of mapping controversy came in. The notion of mapping controversy came from the idea of can you look at your innovation not as what is resisted by idiot backward people, but analyze, describe the excellent reason people have to block your innovation. I did a book on Pasteur and then a book on subway just with that line of thought. I cite that work not to refer directly to it, but because the ecological situation that I described yesterday is exactly in the same mood. We know and we feel that it's a tragic situation, and we think that people should actually do something about it. yesterday Sasha did a very beautiful key for that. The exercise I'm asking you to do is a difficult exercise, is to say people have all the reason in the world to resist any of the innovation, any of the good idea we have about protecting river, protecting the coral reefs, protecting this or that. So that's why it's called a diplomatic encounter. The word diplomacy in international relations means a situation where there is no superior power on top of you. That's why you have to negotiate. A diplomacy starts when people are so tired by war that they begin to negotiate, or because they don't want to get into war. Which means that diplomacy, a diplomatic encounter, is between people who are not exactly sure of what they adhere to. They are not exactly sure what they represent. A diplomatic encounter, by definition, and as you know, diplomats are often accused to be traitors, because precisely what they represent is not clear. But the key point here for this exercise and what we want to do in the show, basically the show like the one before that Mali did, is a way to say, to reconcile the people with the crisis. Mali, right? I mean, this is the goal of the free Biennial. But if we make a mistake on why people don't act, we won't get anywhere. So we need to force ourselves, and it's difficult if we are convinced, if we are militant, if we are scientists, not to populate the world with people who are idiots. I know how difficult it is. We love to populate the world with idiots that resist the good thing we say. I've taught 45 years, so I know that better. The tendency is to say, I mean, people kind of so blockheads that they don't understand. There are 1,000 reasons not to understand, especially when I talk. So, the space, it's a fictive space, but don't forget, we do showing the scale model. The fictive space is a space where we have to get into the shoes of those who oppose us, to the point that we can describe spot by spot, that's why we call it mapping, the position of those who normally would be our enemies. Instead, at least the instead, which is important, instead of saying we should move on and those who resist are just in the old days, in the time of development, it was backward people, or now it could be for militant ecologists, indifferent people, stupid people, selfish people, and so on. People are not selfish, they are interested in their, that they might not know what their interest is. And the great quality of a good diplomat is to move, diplomat is always dealing with selfish nation or selfish people. But the diplomat works on the definition of the interest of the selfish people. So, yesterday we had a beautiful presentation by Sasha saying people without the cause have one set of interests. If only they were associated in their gut with cause death, they would have different interests. In both cases, they are still interested, they are still selfish, but they are not the same self. So, diplomats work on the definition of a self. What a self is interested in. That's the only margin of maneuvers we have. People will always say, I prefer to take the plane to go somewhere for my vacation. I mean, That's not where the difficulty is. The difficulty is who is the self going there. I know Sasha is very worried about tourists, for example, which is a big issue. How do you stop people wanting to be tourists? Not by telling them you should not be selfish, but by modifying what it is they want of the world, what is their self. That's the only margin of maneuver we have. And of course, the whole history of diplomacy is this. Diplomat is saying, if you want this, no, my interest is not exactly that. And people realize what their interest is. The difficulty for us, especially if we are scientists, especially if we are social scientists, especially if we are militant, is that the diplomat doesn't have any superior reason on top of it or her. That's a great difficulty. And of course for us, as a philosopher or as a scientist, we think we have actually on top of us a sort of movement of history, or in the old days, movement of rationality or something like that. We don't. So we place ourselves in a situation where it's more important to put ourselves in the shoes of the others in order to negotiate, in some sort of sense, a modification of the interest of those who are in the negotiation. So this, I wanted to say that it seems abstract, but imagine any sort of beginning of a negotiation, even simulated, even as a game, between Brazil soybean and French cows. The slide which I showed yesterday is very interesting because bringing back, it would be fairly feasible actually, but it would change entirely the landscape of France if we had to grow the soybean. Actually, the whole of France should grow soybean, which would be quite cheap. But then people would say, what do I want from my cows? Do we want cows? No, maybe we don't want cows. After all, we might not be interested that much in cows, and so on and so forth. So you see the situation. So we can, the fourth, we are not going to do today, because even though we are very interested in it, and Director Lin mentioned that at length yesterday, which is how do we do this, and what sort of work we will ask you to do, because don't forget, you will have to do it later during the year. We don't know yet how to do it. Will it be a simulation? Will it be workshop? Will it be games? Will there be a great game of overshoot days? I don't know. But we want to, today, in this very important hours, work on the third question. For that, we need to do exercise. So I propose we switch this. We have a blackboard, which is actually a whiteboard. And I think Shashang agreed to start by doing something which is very difficult for him, which is to redescribe the coral reefs question. Redescribe the coral question, but by attempting to map friends and enemies of corals in a way which is credible for us. And of course, as you immediately, we will find ourselves in the shoes of the enemies of Shashang. So, okay, any question of my little presentation? Any objection to that? Lots of philosophical. So you should take a piece of paper. No, go ahead. And we will test what happened when someone do describe with some precision the friends and enemies of one of the entity which is important for him or her, which is part of the question we asked yesterday. Without, this is the difficulty, immediately saying that those who oppose this situation are actually either backward or house of history or already losers or whatever of the terms we all know so well to use for those who are not enemies, but adversaries or just morons. Okay? And then we see who want to do it again. And do you feel comfortable with that? Or is it too bizarre? Because that's, if we want to interest, you understand the goal. The goal is that if an exhibition has any chance of influencing the way people react to crisis, only if it will change people. But we don't change people by putting information in their mind. We all know that as professors, as activists, as artists. We change people when they change their definition of what they are as selves. How do you do that? If you say, well, they are just backward or ignorant or stupid or reactionary, we go nowhere. So this is a very simple point that we need simple point for building a big simulation. So let's map.
So what?
You have a floor, you have a drawer, you have a pen.
So
And we listen to you with extreme interest. The way you describe the contradiction into those who want to save, protect, and attack the entity you love much, which is the core. It doesn't need to be human, of course.
So this is the entity I like or I love.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. And then, so the things which we are facing is multiple, as I was saying yesterday. One is, of course, is climate change, which is directly associated with people, behavior of people.
Climate change is the enemy of the core? No.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So that is because of humans. So I think the humans will be here. So they are coming here, and then this is going to affect.
This is human as a block or some specific humans?
Or human as a block, the whole, us, we here.
Human as a species?
Human as a special entity, not considering them as one with animals or the ecosystem. And then there is another aspect of tourism, which is again affecting coral reef. So when you look at these things, the main thing is if you consider, because we like to consider ourselves as a separate entity when it comes to the whole ecosystem. We don't consider as one, as I was saying yesterday. We don't consider as a stakeholder. We consider as managers of this earth. So when you see that, we are responsible for something which is unnatural in this Anthropocene, which is going very quick, and we are taking into threshold which is affecting not only coral. This is one I like, but yes, there are different effects on the ecosystem as a whole. And also humans like to go places, we want to see everything, everywhere, curious minds. So then we are also doing again harm to the natural system. So then how we try to, there are ways like for example, if you take tourism, there are many countries, of course, depend on tourism because then all the coastal regions now are the fishermen, fishing people who were, I would say, aboriginal or native people who were subsistence on fisheries are now more and more becoming subsistence.
Wait, you have to make, the humans are become differentiated here, so you have to make little bubbles.
Yes.
You mentioned bubbles yesterday, so draw the bubble.
Humans are always in bubble, every bubble.
But when fishermen,
Yes, they are these people are dependent on tourism now, rather than
You mean the fish tourism?
fishermen.
Fish tourists are not fish.
It is. They many places they are. You see that we are losing because we are also losing fish because of the climate change, and they are more and more becoming dependent on tourism.
But are there fishermen who are friends of coral reefs because of the fish?
They were friends before. Slowly they are becoming not friends anymore. Yeah.
Okay. It would be nice to have a bubble on the right side and then across to show that they have disappeared. So good humans, fishermen, friends of fish of a coral reef, no?
Yes. Also. Yep.
So
So-
they might be resuscitated at some point in the discussion.
There are also subsistence or fishermen who benefit from coral reefs and also benefit each other. So there can be.
And we cross them because you say they have disappeared.
Yeah.
But the memory of them is important for the
Yes, yes, very important because they have the local knowledge of how to, because the generations and generations they are getting the knowledge how to sustain an ecosystem. But then because of tourism, we are losing them.
Okay.
So that's also affecting local equations. So,
Shashank,
yes,
may I suggest you, instead of tourism,
yeah,
which is abstract thing, you divide tourists, and then based on the case of Oslo in Cebu you mentioned.
yes.
Of what?
I'm going to come to that. Yeah.
Okay, so I would put tourists and I don't know, like for example, in the case of Oslo, this diving shops.
Yeah, that's this fishermen and diving shops. I will come to that again.
Diving what?
Diving shops.
Sharks.
The diving shop, which take people to dive in the. So
It's a subset of the tourism.
yes, subset of this tourism.
Okay.
So if you see now, what's happening is like tourism can be divided into just general tourism and ecotourism. What we call
Eco-tourists are the good guys.
they are supposed to be good guys, but sometimes it can also be bad depending on the situation. So the bad example of ecotourism I can see recent years is Oslo in Cebu, in Philippines. A lot of tourists go to see whale shark in Philippines and
Why not making another bubble for the whale shark?
Whale shark.
Oh, if you are so.
No, but I know the story, but it's the other professor.
whale sharks are important
What
part of.
are these guys with sharks?
Whale sharks are the biggest fish. Sharks. They are not sharks, they are fish.
They are friends.
They are friends of coral reef.
They like coral reef or they like human flesh?
They don't eat flesh.
Okay.
Yeah. So they eat plankton. They eat plankton. They are vegetarian. So
Vegetarians.
yeah.
Shark, okay. Good.
They
Vegetarian
zooplankton also.
shark.
Yeah. Sorry, they eat zooplankton also. So it's like but not meat. Yes. So no, what's happening with this is, for example, like there is a recent. I just downloaded that one. I can show you. So I was speaking with John about this long time back, and then there is a local movement going on. So what happened is the fishermen who are who went into tourism recently, they start feeding the whale shark because tourists are attracted to see the whale shark. So the whale sharks are fed by the local fishermen and diving shops in tons. Now, because of the feeding, it's also killing the corals. So these people are feeding dive shops, and then fishermen, all of people are feeding whale sharks to keep them in a certain location so that tourism can come there to see them.
Okay, classical question.
And then they are killing the coral reef. So that paper came out.
Why are the whales destroying the coral reef?
Because of lot of food, it's causing a lot of high nutrition, and the nutrition is affecting the coral life. So it's a indirect effect on coral reef.
Indirect.
It's not direct. So that's very interesting. So it's whale shark tourism impacts coral reef in Philippines. This is the new paper which they published, which looks at how a lot of nutrition because of the feed will affect the coral reef. So when you see, the problem is, it's not just a direct problem of climate change. There are so many other background noises happening, and everything is because of we.
Are there good reason why tourists want to see coral, or is it just because they are mean?
Tourism wants to see coral because they're beautiful. People like to see fish, associated fishes. And then what else? Because of ecotourism, now the way NGOs deal or even the environmentalists deal with things is that you educate people. So to educate people, you take them to the location. It happens in every science. You take people, you want to give them hands-on, you want to show them that, look, this is the condition of coral here, or maybe in future you may not see these kind of things. So that also will take many people all the time. It also put pressure, I think. So too much of anything is bad already.
But in order to put pressure, pressure is the unexpected consequence. A very good idea, which is to
it's very good idea to do ecotourism, but then it also cannot. It has to be regulated in certain way. So even this paper says yes, whale shark tourism is not bad.
Who are the regulating agencies?
The environmental agencies in respective countries.
None.
Some countries are corrupted, some countries are okay. Like in Philippines with Oslo case, the scientists and the NGOs are fighting with the government to make the regulation to not feed the whale shark, but it's going on. The case is going on from like almost more than 5 or 6 years. I mean, the people are fighting with the government to put more regulations. So this paper came out now, so that means it's more pressure for the environmental protection agencies.
Good.
But the problem is now. We should put that. We should put EPA here. The environmental protection agencies in every countries are a government body. Now, whatever decision they take is directly related to the economy of the country. So if tourism is a big economy for any island nation, we don't know how this will go. This can go against, this can go for, or they can take neutral way to deal. But the problem is the government sometimes can be disconnected with the problem. So if the government is disconnected, as I said, like we owe people who are not scientists. Even like case of India, every time we have ministers, Minister for Education is maybe 2nd grade pass in the school, or Minister of Environment is maybe high school pass. They don't know about anything about environment, so they are disconnected completely. And when we try to put together all these things,
They are
then
disconnected, but they have good, strong economic interest
yes,
in developing their country.
yes, they are good, strong economic incentive and want to develop country in a way. So why there is a problem of India signing the IPCC, the Paris Protocol, or going for the Paris Protocol in a way, because India still wants to develop. All the governments are quoted on the basis of development. And then there is no development if they become environmental friendly.
But
So,
here we try to localize a little bit.
localize, yes. I'll come to that local point. Sorry, I need to make my point again. So this is a photograph of algal reef in Taiwan. It's in Taipei. So there is the reef made by red algae.
With windmill.
The red algae, all this pink you see, they're all red algae. There is an algal reef in the north, and these are all the organisms present in the reef. So you can see they're all different. So the diversity is very high. So what's happened in Taiwan is, so there's algal reef.
Can we, est-ce qu'on peut tourner le tableau?
Pardon?
Est-ce qu'on peut tourner le tableau?
Le tourner le tableau.
Oui, parce
Attends,
que
d'accord,
ça va
d'accord.
être un cas.
Wait,
Great.
before we get in, so these are the associated living entities
Yes.
with the reef. They are sort of friends of the
Yeah.
coral reef.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's get a little bit further into human part of it.
Yes.
Because suppose now you discuss with the good guys who are, for good reason, trying to develop educational eco-tourism.
Mm.
What sort of argument do you give them? so that they don't actually, you have no other thing to say except don't go.
No, I don't say don't go. You regulate the thing. Everything needs to be regulated. For example, there are certain successful cases like some of the atolls in India, in the western coast of India, they have regulated entry of people. No foreign tourists are allowed. Only on one atoll. We have 32 atolls. So one atoll can only foreign tourists go, and also regulated. Maybe like per month 25 or per month 50 people. Even we, Indians, can go only 200 people per month in all those atolls. So then you can maintain the pressure. Because the problem is that if too many people go at one time, it can cause pressure to many things, not just the system. So the regulation needs to be done with environment taxes to people. There has to be kind of, you tax people to enter certain zones. And that money can be used by the national parks or government to maintain or do the things, which many countries don't have. So I don't mind people going, but it should be regulated. That's what I say.
So now we move to the monument. Do we have an associated?
That one, the algal reef, that is the Taiwan problem, which is very recent. So I will tell you the story. So there is an algal reef in northern Taiwan. It supports a lot of biodiversity. It also has a
My idea was, can we reverse the board so we don't erase this and we have another.
I don't think we can write.
Hey. That's
Agree.
nicer.
Change the date tonight.
That's nicer.
Do we have chalk?
No.
So
We
anyway,
have to do justice, I'm
yeah.
afraid.
So this algal reef, it supports a lot of diversity, including endangered coral species. That's why it's interest for us. So there's endangered coral fishes we found, but the problem is because Taiwan wants to phase out nuclear power and rely on other power systems, energy systems, the Chinese Petroleum Corporation wants to build a new port to get the ship for the petroleum. So they are building right on the reef. So our lab, with many other labs in Taiwan, we got a project from the environment, from the Sinica. For 2 years we fight. My boss go to court, case against the government and case against the CPC, and we lost. And the movement was including the local people in Taiwan who were directly present very near to the system and the diversity. They involved with us. We had so many protests. We protest in front of the Liganan building. We appealed to the president of Taiwan. We did all the possible things, but the final solution is the CPCE will build the port and destroy the algal reef completely. So that's a lost cause, but then we also find so much information that there were, of course, scientists always want to publish papers, so we have so many data to publish so many papers.
Yes. It's a good part of it.
Yes. So at least one thing came, but then the diversity of algal reef is going to get destroyed because of that. So it's called Datan algal reef. So it's a very good example of how the government interests lean towards economic development or the economy of a country rather than the diversity. And I want to say this because as we know, we are disconnected at different levels with the things happening. Yeah. So that's very local problem we have.
Well, this is what we are interested in.
So we don't know if we can reverse it can be reversed, the decision made by government, but for now, yeah, we still don't lose hope. The local people and the environmental groups are still trying to pressure the government not to build the petroleum, the port and also the receiving station. Yeah.
So those calls basically are
Yeah, they are endangered species. We have like one endangered species and few other species of corals, but a lot of sharks and a lot of fish. That photo is that painting is what the different animals are there in the algal reef.
Good. Thank you very much. So how do we move from that? What could be made in during possible? I mean, I'm just imagining how we, as an example of a sort of negotiation could start. But in this case, it's there was a legal
Yeah.
translation of a conflict,
Yeah.
and the case was lost.
Yeah.
But it's lost, it's still going on.
Still
As
trying
usual.
to pressure, yeah, trying to make, we publish more and more papers, and also we can get the support. We also get the support from Mission Blue Foundation. So we got, this is Mission Blue, it's an international organization, Mission Blue, and it's Hope. So now, this algal reef is Hope Spot. So they identify different biodiversity important spots in the world and then make it as a Hope Spot. So now this is recognized as a Hope Spot from the Mission Blue Foundation. So that is one of the, like we try to put pressure on the president of Taiwan and the government to, because it is Hope Spot, you can't destroy it now. But still, it's like they're moving forward, they don't care for the Hope Spot, it seems, so yeah.
Those who are in the list of allies now, and especially the local people who fought, they were concerned by the cause themselves or by the whole place where they live?
The place where they live and the whole the biodiversity of the region, the organisms which are in the location.
So the beautiful aspect was important for them.
Yeah.
Very good, very important. So they have allies, those corals in a way.
Yeah.
Some of them.
Yeah.
Some corals have some allies, not so much.
I don't know whether it helps to add the historical complexity to the Datan or reef story is that the exact same village, Datan Cun, Guanyijiang, was where a very serious cadmium pollution case was detected back in 1980s.
Yeah.
And the majority of the people who lived in that village were relocated from the reservoir, Shimen Shui Ku, back in 1950s when they built a reservoir, they relocated the people from the mountainside to the seaside. And so a lot of residents in that area isn't really connected with the seashore.
No.
Yeah, they just have their house there and they find a job.
Yeah.
So that's why the algal reef issue is maybe people passionate about that are throughout the island, but not necessarily those who live there.
Yeah, sure. Not necessarily everyone.
Yeah. So there's really interesting disconnection between people who live there and people and the place they live. And those people who are passionate about the place are not those people who live there.
Yeah. Actually, you're right, because in that area, actually there is no population living. I mean, it's all industrial area. They have the Thagan, the industrial, the whole thing is all industries. There are many industries there now, and then this petroleum corporation has all places taken over and they've built everything. The reason why it interested people is because the coral species which we found there, which I say endangered, it's only in the second location in whole of Taiwan. The first location it was found is in Kaohsiung. That is the holotype locality. Now the Kaohsiung harbor where it was found is getting destroyed. It's highly sedimented and then we may lose the holotype location. So the second location is Datan. And now if we can say that that's why it's important, and people got interested that look, we are getting this coral, and then they dig and they find fishes, they find eel, they find shark, they find so many other creatures, and they get more interested. And then NGOs came in. And then Academia Sinica came in, and then everyone started coming in.
No, we have a social movement here
Yeah.
built around it.
It was a 2-year social movement.
From people who are passionate also because they have been already dislocated earlier. That's part of the story, if I understood right.
Yeah,
They have been dislocated.
yeah, the story
From
of
another
this
story.
location is that well, romantically we'll imagine that people who live in that village are concerned with the seashore there, but it is not the case because people who live there have been undergoing a series of relocation, so they are disconnected with the place they live in. And people who are passionate are generally passionate about ecology, and they are not necessarily those who live there.
But they are alive themselves.
Yeah.
So something like
Actually, among the
Stop.
allies are our
Well,
friends.
No, it's okay.
Oh, but maybe you.
at that point.
我刚想提到小湾那个工商的朋友也是支持那个。
Okay, I'll add some to Xinxin stories. Part of my gold story is Cadmian. And the people, they were relocating there because they were building the dam, Shimen Shuiku, upstream.
How it started the story yesterday.
Yeah, part of my story yesterday. Yes, so it's correlated with water too, because we are building the dam to water
Reservoir.
the power
Yeah.
plant. And then they relocated people on the mountain, the Aboriginal people, to the seashore, and they started to learn to do growing rice. And that was the first case of our cadmium rice in Taiwan. So it was the first pollution case. It's a tragic place. So first they have cadmium rice, and now they have this
Yes,
problem,
the-
and they're building another fire plant
Yes,
there.
the petroleum corporation. So it's yeah.
That's very important because we begin by this discussion to stimulate a remapping of Taiwan series of successive catastrophes or people, we build a reservoir for water question and then displace the people and then etc. And this is basically the sort of thing we should be able to do in the show, which is a re-description of the different basically controversies or catastrophes that we have, which explain why people would be interested or disinterested by some of the issue.
Yeah. So I want you need to take.
Take
Can you also help me to do the Taiwan on the Kenting problem, the tourism? I think the paper
I was going to speak about. I mean,
Yeah,
I want to use actually the Algeria for some things that I think is like kind of a revelation of a larger problem actually of human. I think usually we say like human is a social species, but I believe actually we are not really a social species. We are actually looking for individual profit and well-being. So I really strongly believe that basically we are all enemy.
we are all what?
All enemy of the coral reef. And basically we are like working to be less enemy. So I will say like actually the less enemy is the one not doing anything, like very far in very remote place. This one will have no impact.
Yeah.
Me as a scientist working on coral reef, I would say maybe I'm 60 or 70% enemy of the coral reef because I'm traveling a lot actually for my work. I have a huge impact actually on the earth. I have a very high carbon footprint. So I mean to come back to the algae reef, I believe, yeah, of course many people actually want to fight against actually this construction. But at the same time, if you ask them, oh, do you mind if we are going to build actually this terminal somewhere else? As long as it's not in front of their house, they will be okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just actually moving the problem, but basically we are just thinking about ourselves. And I think like this is the human nature. I mean, we are
So
we are not a social animal. We don't think about the survival of the species. We are thinking about our individual survival. It's basically the human nature. So I'm quite pessimistic for me.
No, it's
To me, it's- yeah, I mean, I'm a scientist. I'm very well aware of the carbon dioxide. I'm still going actually to conference. I'm still traveling in other countries for my research. I also still enjoy actually some eco resorts
Yes.
for my holidays. So I believe, I'm a paradox, and I think, actually one of the main problems is because we don't recognize that everybody is a paradox.
Yeah. So we come back to that bubble problem. That's very exact case of we are all
but here
individual.
yesterday we had a negative version of a bubble, and here we have a sort of positive
Yeah.
war all against all.
Yeah.
Again, we are not trying to make the show is not about making people altruistic.
Yeah.
The problem is to modify what is to be selfish. That's the only thing where we can have some sort of action. It's selfish, I defend the self, but what's the definition of myself? That there is lots of variation. If you have kids, if you don't have kids, if you have land, if you don't have land, I mean, it's completely different definition of self. So human nature here is slightly simplification of what is a self. And we know from many other anthropological work, to be defined as a self has a lot of variety. And it's not something which is fixed. So the individualistic aspect is of course important, but individuals have a very mobile, movable definition of self. I don't think it's easy to have an individual with a crawl in it.
Yeah.
I define myself and the crawl as one unit, because you beautifully said,
Yeah.
the crawl, and I myself and in me of the crawl I study.
No,
Yeah, we are all divided.
it's true.
That's part of it. We are all divided, and there is no. If the show is not an ecological show. It's not a militant show about the fact that we should be altruistic and count on and defend nature. It's accepting this division. We don't live on the same planet. You and I don't live on the same planet.
No, it's
And
like
trying to feed out of that. This is what we are interested in.
when I say that, like, look, when what he says is 100% right. We can't change the nature we have. What I would want to see people doing is that, look, everyone has, they are doing what they want to do to live their life. But what my problem now is that many people are disconnected. Like even educated nations, the 100% literacy nations like Taiwan or Japan or all these countries, or even Singapore you take, anywhere, the news channels, the newspapers, the magazines are bombarded with problems of environment, right? So the people are literate, they're educated, they see, they watch, they hear, but still they are disconnected. I don't care, like you can fly, you can go to conference, it doesn't matter, that's our life. As I said, we are managers of this earth, we are not stakeholders. So we do all kind of things. So we need to bring people towards that connectivity more and more as much as possible so that we can reduce the impact as much as possible. If everyone start reducing their impact, then we can achieve something, at least half of the goal of IPCC predictions, not complete. That's what I want to see. So I never say you should stop everything, but make it reduced. So if I can tell people to do this, don't be disconnected. Please be connected more with your environment. Then we can go somewhere. That's what I think.
But we had sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was murmuring with what
Private.
Sociologists are complaining about human is not
Yeah,
social
yes.
anymore.
I mean the terminology of bubble. I'm thinking whether there is an alternative to that, because what we are talking about is not exactly like bubble, because when you think about bubble, is translucent. You can actually see through it. It's just distorted. And when you think about bubble is easy to burst. But what we are talking about here is not easy to burst. And artistic intervention has to really make an effort to make people to see through that kind of visual barrier. And so maybe that's something more than bubble, heavier maybe.
Spheres.
Yeah.
Peter Sloterdijk wrote 3 big volumes around sphere, which is a study of all the bubbling possibilities. 3 big German volumes of a very important piece of work. Question.
Actually, what part of the discussion with Diko and I is something about, like, because they're using the bubble as a metaphor, metaphorical use or something. It's very good as an insulation, art, right? You can see a lot of people living in different bubbles. But somehow I'm really curious about like what is the difference between your planet and the bubbles. So it's simply like yeah. So I would like to see more discussion about say like bubble just because they want to. So they say like people like to live in the shells
Yes.
or the cocoon. They
It's
want to live in
cocoon is
something
better, I think.
right?
Yeah, cocoon is more.
But somehow they how to explain it? I mean, in terms of the diplomatic encounters.
Right.
If you live in bubbles, it's like a crash of bubbles, or say like how to make it. So I really wonder because now we have the same on planet. Planet means say something like we have different views, but different views doesn't say like we live in different bubble physically. I mean separated. So I just really want some people can help me out with this.
It's like what I meant was that I don't know how to use that term in a better way, but for me it is like because I use that bubble example is because as I say everything is transparent, we can see and we can hear, but we don't do unless it is affecting our health or our immediate life. We don't take any action.
We shifted the discussion here from the description of a case to two general pronouncements about human nature, and so I think we should go back.
Yeah, sorry, yes.
Because you asked precise question of the planet, and since it's the title, I have to answer. The metaphor, if we want to push it a little further, is of course that in the planetary system, every single planet influences all the others. So it's on the contrary, they are completely overlapping. I mean, it's the definition of a planet in a Newtonian system. So it's actually a fairly good metaphor, because the problem with the individualization argument, which was presented before as a model, is that the bubble is supposed to be isolated.
Yeah.
That's not what the planets are. The planets are precisely influencing all the others. And of course, in that sense, we are all social animals. Planets are social animals. They depend on one another. The moon depends on the attraction of the Mars, and Mars it's all things which are very well known. So actually, planet is a good metaphor for the fact that even though each planet seems isolated, they are actually overlapping. And we are, in a way, overlapping with the cores in some sort of very distant view from a natural historian. We depend on the core very much. And for Darwin, discovering where the cores grow, Humboldt or whatever, they would immediately see you cannot live without the core. So the ecological ideology, if I can say that, is to say the opposite of what you say. We are all connected. But both positions don't carry any political work. One of them is too individual, the other is too connected. Yes, we are all connected, but how? In which way? I mean, it's not true that we are all connected. This is why this exercise of describing the connection, well, okay, here's a beautiful case. Very good meaning people do ecological choice, and in a way, they destroy the core just as fast as the bad guys who do bad to it. Okay. So this is a specific case, and of course, ecological dispute is full of that. I mean, I've been in this sort of dispute for, 40 years. Every time there is a good intention, there is, of course, a divided self, and you mentioned a beautiful case of. So, the metaphor of planet is a powerful way of describing overlapping. We know that since Copernicus, or Newton at least. It's precisely the attraction and repulsion. We are divided,
right?
And we have to accept this division, as Dennis beautifully said, Professor Dennis beautifully said, and I'm simultaneously a friend and enemy of mine. Cool. So I'd like, if we have a few more minutes before the pause, to, if it's okay, to pursue what is, on the scientific point of view, a way to get into the calls themselves as friends and enemies. I mean, if we get into the some of the scientific details, how would they? Well, I'm going to use the word pluralize themselves, so to speak. Are they friends and enemies inside the coral reefs, which you could begin to make alliance with? Good corals, bad corals, slow corals, corals who are resisting better to the climate change. That's what
Ecologist.
Yes.
Yes. I also yes.
So
This is basically our work.
let's complicate the story now on the side of the science of the corals a little bit, because that would be a good enlightenment for the people here,
Well,
and for myself, of course.
No, you published the paper. You need to tell.
yeah, I mean, actually, in terms of science, we have an evolution in the thinking. Actually, at the beginning, we were thinking all the corals were very weak, and that actually all of them will disappear. Then after we arrived a couple of decades later, actually, to the idea of winner and loser. So we discovered that actually some species were doing better than the other. And now, basically, actually, we still evolve actually our thought about corals, our response to environmental changes, and we identify different strategies. Means like actually we have like in coral reef we have almost like 800 species, and we know that within these 800 species of corals, basically we will have different strategies. So some will do better in some specific regions, some will do some better at some specific depths. So that basically all the corals are very, very different. So yeah, I would say like, what does it change in terms of actually our knowledge on the coral reef is basically we know that corals will still be there like in many centuries. The question is which one, and I believe that most of our work right now is to understand actually which one will be there tomorrow.
Is there a big movement to grow the corals in laboratories and to regrow them? I mean, is this an important aspect of it, the sort of geoengineering aspect?
Yes, some people are doing this.
Yeah.
After like there was a trend actually to call this super corals. It was like basically the idea to select the stronger individual in the population and basically to grow them in the lab and then after to repopulate the reef. Now actually, well, you have two schools in coral reef. You have some people who will say that it's totally meaningless because despite actually we can improve actually the corals, it will not improve them so much, and that actually the climate change is it's happening too fast. So despite all the improvement we can do, it will not be fast enough. And you have some people who say, yeah, it's better than nothing, so we should give a try. Yeah. So you have two schools, and I would say like there is like two bubbles.
Two bubbles.
Two bubbles in the science.
No, it's called the assisted adaptation. So they are trying to assist the corals to adapt to the climate change. So we have one group in Hawaii and the other in Australia. They have a big money grants for identifying corals and then grow them and then mutate the symbiotic algae in the lab mutations and make them stronger and then put them.
There's a lab in Florida as well, right?
They are doing natural. Yeah, the Florida one, I think they are trying to do naturally. So what they do is they go after every temperature stress events, bring the corals, and then try to grow them in different temperature stress and take them back again. They are also doing in Florida.
Yeah, just because you say it's two bubbles and we cannot say bubbles, actually people are fighting it's very violent. I would say like sometimes you can see actually some exchange. It's actually very violent.
I've studied sciences for 40 years. I know how terrible they can be to one another. Yeah. Only theologians are worse. Yes.
Excuse me. Can you guys explain a little bit for us to what extent? Because what struck me in your research is that how you are very sensitive and very you have probably the highest sense of risk I met among all the community of scientists in relation to climate emergency. I mean, I've in your research articles you published in the recent one in Nature, you with 40 specialists of corals around the world, I feel that a very intense sense of crisis. So can you give us an idea to what extent, like for example, if we reach two more degrees within 10 years, how many corals will collapse? How many will survive? Just an idea.
Ecologically, I think Biennial will speak. Physiologically, as Biennial mentioned, that there are we divide the corals into resistance mechanisms based on their groups and then things. So it's very complicated. For this answer is really complicated, I mean, to answer, because regionally, locally, and then globally they have different variations in their behavior. Yes, of course, but if you say, if the climate becomes +2 or +3 or +4, most of the regions you will lose the corals, except for those very extreme environments. There are like in Gulf, Persian Gulf, Arabian Gulf, or even some other environments. And then Biennial has also looked at Taiwan. He can also say in which part of Taiwan they have different groups which are more resistant. He has.
Yeah, I think it's
Resisting group. This is interesting.
Well, unfortunately, I think I cannot answer to how many species because, well,
it's difficult.
like for example, one of my research topic is about actually the possibility of migration to higher latitudes. So right now, actually, we have some place like in South Korea where actually, and you went there actually, well, the corals are increasing. So basically, sometimes actually we believe that some species actually can just migrate actually, and so basically we are not going to lose them. So it's not static. So basically, what we are losing actually in Arctic and Antarctica, yeah, for sure it's going to be lost. But actually, if we increase the temperature, basically maybe some species will disappear under the equator, but they will rise in some subtropical locations. We also think that actually the depths can, some species may migrate actually to deeper environments. So, well, I mean, to quantify how many species can survive, actually, honestly, I would like to know, but I cannot give any answer. Actually, I believe most of the species will survive. But now, actually, the thing's very interesting. It's like, I mean, when you go to South Korea and you analyze actually the species migrating there, you have some fishermen who used to get their fish actually, and the fish was in ecosystem dominated by algae. Tomorrow is going to be dominated by corals. And so you have transition, you have ecological transition. This ecological transition has some repercussion on the social condition of the people there. So fishermen, they need to change actually the way they were fishing, and obviously there is an amazing actually economical shift as a consequence of this modification. So it's all actually the system which is totally changing. And I was like in a seaweed conference like 2 or 3 months ago. Basically, this was the topic of one of the sessions of the conference was tropicalization. It means like, yeah, some place where we don't have coral reef now, maybe tomorrow they will have.
But I had one more point. So we are seeing the tropicalization and everything and moving to the latitudes, but we also have to remember that climate change is not only temperature. It's also increase in typhoons and cyclones everywhere, or the hurricanes. So the more and more typhoons hit in the intensity, they become bigger and bigger, and many typhoons coming and hitting the coastal, they are going to destroy the corals also. So even if some corals can move and survive, if they get destroyed by one typhoon, and then they get again time like 10 years or
and
to
the acidity of
acidity also, yeah.
Okay, well, we are not going to become specialists, of course.
Yes.
But I think it was very illustrating, and especially the last part, which is a pluralization of what is called nature. I mean, we had a beautiful case for those who are interested in actor network theory by the expression of resisting groups. Resisting group can mean the fishermen, can mean the people on the seashore as well as the corals, and of course the typical canonical example of actor network. How do they connect? But what is interesting here is that when we begin to describe in some detail, precisely getting out of a general discussion about the human nature, and we begin to have open space. That is some type of people with some type of coral in some place have a margin of maneuvers which would not be thought before. That's what I mean by diplomatic encounter. That is, you are associated with those corals from those scientists, with these people and these NGOs and this foundation, then here is one part of the former nature which is now livable. So it's exactly we did exactly what I wanted to demonstrate, which is as soon as we shift out of the general discussion about ecology and the earth and so on, we begin to have a grasp which open margin of maneuvers. And a diplomatic encounter is exactly that. It opens a new space on the condition that we pluralize both sides, the social and the natural, which is, again, classical claim, but it was nice to see it here. And the point is, of course, how we do it. I propose we have a break, where we could provide information and background for the museum without predicating on how we will work on in a year. But we still have to maintain in our head the fourth question I raised yesterday and again this morning at the beginning of the talk, which is how do we stage in a way understandable by people who come to the visit to show those sort of lessons or that we call diplomatic, and I think now everybody understands why diplomatic is important, meaning opening a new space which would not have been visible before, either because the non-humans are more complex than we thought, or because the humans, as you nicely demonstrated a minute ago, are more complex and then gotten out of the usual opposition between human and nature. All of that we sort of know. And I think it's useful to take another example which has been studied a lot by many people here, and I give the floor to Paul.
Thanks, Bruno. I will briefly introduce this case, and then I will ask Xinxin and Yiping and perhaps Wendy also. So the idea here with taking another example is the community of people now gathering around this table. We have, I think, two big groups. One group is like specialists of corals or hermit crab, Tifusier, what else?
Speak about the hermit crab in this story, I'm sorry.
Okay. I think Ray Wang is in between, is also quite aware of this animal, all kind of animals impacted by heavy metals and other pollution. Unfortunately, someone else I contacted could not come. Is a specialist of deep geology, like earthquake. And yesterday we had also Zhong Hong, Zhong Hong has experience with the communities affected by typhoons and earthquakes. Okay, so, and another group, we have scholars familiar with STS. So STS is studies of science, social, sociology or philosophy or history of science. And those scholars are more familiar with what we know identifies as controversies, because when you use sociology of science, very often you meet controversies. So for us, it's very obvious that when one group of researchers will think that okay, corals are not so much under emergency, and another group will think yes, it's a big emergency because of climate change. It's the way things goes in the history of science. Not all of them, but many STS researchers here have been involved in with so-called, sorry, but I will use the word environmental issues or ecological issues. I know you want to move something else, but meaning that, and mostly about the way environmental issues have affected humans. Let them be workers inside factories or residents affected by heavy metals or other kind of pollution.
But humans are important too.
Yes, so far. So I thought since many of us have been working and have been involved as a research action in the case of RCA, electronic factory workers. Oh, okay, so
Go to the blackboard and work.
I just try to identify all the actors involved, and maybe I will let Xing Xing and Ibi tell the whole story. So we have a factory from the US, which comes to Taiwan. So it becomes Taiwan RCA. And it recruits workers, so we have like at least 80,000 workers, mostly female. I think it's important. Then the factory closed, and then we have cancers. I don't know if we can, and other disease. Maybe those are kind of. And oh, I forgot. Sorry, the PCE and other toxic chemicals, like organic solvents used in the factory, polluted. So it created soil pollution, underground pollution.
What sort of chemistry is this?
Electronic.
Electronic factory.
Radio Corporation of America, they were making television sets.
Ah, okay.
And then we have cancers and other health problems for the workers. So ground pollution and public health issue. Then we have lawsuits. So it means we have judges, lawyers. The state is involved through Department of Labor, and EPA, of course, regarding the environmental issue. Who else is involved in that? So we have.
Activists.
Oh, so the capitalists are RCA. The company was bought by General Electric, which is, and a French company called Thomson Electronics, and nowadays it is called Technicolor. And
So RCA has disappeared.
yeah, the factory is no more in Taiwan, but
The company exists.
yeah.
I want to add something here. I think, sorry, Professor
Okay.
Zhao wants to add that there are more actors, which are doctors and caretakers.
Yeah, okay, of course. And what else? Labor group?
Volunteers.
Volunteers?
Doctors are friends or enemies?
Social workers.
Oh, both. Depends which side they are.
Sorry, social workers and
Social workers.
So here,
Not
yeah.
exactly social workers, but social activists.
social workers.
SDS.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so
Here.
What STS is doing well?
They have been very supportive, right? Sasha?
Were there any population displaced because of the company being built in the local? Was there any population displaced because of the company being built?
No. Yeah, but the plant site is permanently looted and it's on the same level for the past 30 years without any progress at all.
So how long is it spreading?
Oh, I forgot the residents around the plant.
How long?
How far it has spread? Is it spreading like
And
far? Yeah.
actually, nobody knows, depending on where you drill the monitor well. So that's where you cannot see. And that's why the groundwater cleanup has no problem.
I think it's okay.
Why do you quit?
Oh.
You should stand there. You forgot the years. Taiwan RCA is from 1970, and it's
No, it's,
1970 to 1992.
the idea is not to tell the whole story, but to bring in all the actors. And
What are the media doing there?
the media,
Are they part of the whole scene or are they
of
not?
course, yeah.
But in an interesting way? I mean,
What do you think, media?
Of course, this was the first one to report this case.
so they are on the side of making it public.
Yeah.
Mostly are
So what's the state of the
Supportive.
legislation? Because of course, sorry, I have to push this button. What is very interesting compared to the other case is that when our coalition people spoke about all the scene and the instrument to make it controversy is not built. You mentioned very briefly the litigation. It's not even litigation, it's about the regulation, possible regulation. So what is really interesting if we compare the two cases is that here, no matter what, there is a procedure, a sort of publicly available and common knowledge procedure, which is for the militant as well as for doctors, etc., to organize the controversy around a legal case. So that there is no legal case for the case of course yet. I mean, there are lots of initiatives, but not yet. So we see that it's slightly easier to frame this as a controversy because of a long history of litigation.
That's why you wanted
Even
to
if
mention
you lose,
it.
even if you lose,
So,
still it's organized. But maybe not for the groundwater.
you think,
I would be interested in
Take a
that. That's okay.
so
Just to
just to
check
give
my
you an idea of
points.
the history, of the time frame, the company came in Taiwan in 1968. I mean, the plans of start operating in 1968,
In 70.
and they closed in 1992. The first lawsuit started in 2004, and we got the first verdict from the district court in 2015, and we got the Supreme Court verdict last year.
And there also in 1994, is the year with the government, the media.
Oh yeah.
found that there was a solution.
1994 was the time when the underground pollution was found out,
Media.
and it became visible immediately.
Can you say more about the two different litigation systems for underground water and for cancer?
But I would like my colleagues to.
Okay. So, so where do I pick up the story? Where were you?
Okay, so I'm going to take
Okay, this is a learning mechanism here.
Okay, so media is closed in 1994, and here are workers. They are organized in 1998, and then the lawyers come in around 2000, and yet again in 2005, and between the workers and GE Technicolor actually, in this lawsuit we have many partisan expert witnesses. And some are for the workers, some are for the company side. And the interesting thing is that every expert witness has to undergo examination and cross-examination. So they are cross-examined. And so this is the social form of how this very complex issue play out. So it's a deal in the courtroom by cross-examination. One side's lawyer asks another side's expert witness questions to the point that maybe
This is for the cancer part or for the groundwater part?
cancer. Because RCA quickly settled with EPA, Taiwan EPA about the soil part in 1990s, so they started cleaning up. But they say nobody has been hurt by the poison. And so that's why workers was get angry in 1998 because they say because they drink the underground water, so there's no way that the polluted underground water did not affect them, and they found cancer among them. So that's
Professor Lin is going to add another bubble.
yes.
No, it's a big,
This is
big
not, I have
thing.
to say, this is not the clearest map possible. And it has a lot of entities.
Yeah, DNAPL is.
What did you add? What did you add? DNAPL is
There's something underground, it's combined with PCE and like 31 or more chemicals. They were underwater, they were denser than water.
Yeah, can we colonize the other side of the coral side of the? Maybe we have to do
Yeah.
And I would like to bring, yesterday you mentioned about a ghost. Ghost? Yeah, we have a lot of ghosts in this story. And can you 那个等一下，我要加入那个刘翔。
Oh,
Oh yeah.
Those
are dead
Workers,
dead children
workers here.
of
here.
miscarriages and a lot.
So I have a question. So how did the EPA come to know that it doesn't affect if there is something solved? How the EPA decide that there is no effect of that pollution?
So they're still cleaning it up.
How they say that it is clean and it doesn't have any effect on people?
Well, they have monitored well. Well, the
No, the
EPA.
people one, they conducted epidemiological studies.
But then there are, like you say, children are affected or people are dying of
Yes,
cancer.
that's what the studies say. So on that part, it is a group of scientists are friends with the workers. But at the same time, there is another group of scientists are friends with the company. They say they did not find anything. So
It's
this
the same case we have with algal reef. There is one group saying that it doesn't matter, that nothing is happening with the algal reef.
yeah.
It's the same problem, yeah.
And the interesting thing is that the company side doesn't have to prove that they are not guilty. They only have to prove that nothing can be proved.
Yeah. But how about the doctors then? The health officials are not fighting against that thing?
Those doctors are public health scientists. Two groups of public health scientists are involved in it. One group is based in National Defense Hospital. Another is based on NTU School of Public Health. So they are both interested in this case, and Yiping actually was one of the science team that did the study at the time.
Yeah. And the reason we found out that there's underground, and we are pretty sure about the underground pollution, is because when GE was transferring it to Technicolor, they have environmental engineers. Technicolor say they only buy the site company, they don't buy pollution. So they knew about this pollution in the year 1992. And so Technicolor just quickly sold the land and
To a property developer, try to develop.
So you can write the landowner now.
Landowner.
What's his name?
Yang Tiansheng.
So the company
it's getting very complicated.
It's very
because landowner.
actually, yeah. This group is actually quite important in 1990s. It was part of the big political factions inside Kuomintang at the time, but they later the group bankrupted. So the landowner did not play active role in later part of the controversy.
So there's 3 reports from GE and Thomson, and so we have to recover the old report to confirm the pollution and all the pollutant. And it was actually the media has a hold of this 3 report in 1994. So GE decided, they agreed to clean up the land. 'Cause
How
we
big
have-
was the public, I mean, in terms of public involvement and, it's an issue that everyone in Taiwan would know about it, or
Yeah, it was quite well known.
a bit like your big halls you mentioned yesterday, I mean, the big,
It's not.
We have 1,600 plaintiffs, so
Okay.
each time
But
there is-
the local residents have a very different opinion about the pollution, because it's very, there's a lot of development in this place. So the residents decided to play blind to
Yeah,
this whole
yeah.
case.
Yeah, they want to
Only the
sell
workers.
their land, move to a safer place. So if you keep talking about pollution, they cannot sell their land. Yeah, so.
And they affect their property price.
Can you say a little bit about like how to make this event public? That means say like they may sell their land, or say did they say something to the newspaper, or say like to create a discourse? I think all the things we learn about this case because they sued. They sued, so everything you heard is from the court.
Yeah,
And then because of the social entity involved with it, they
Different
give
with the
reported
court,
it, we know
yeah.
that. But this is only one of the ways that makes things public, right? So I think maybe you can say more about like, before the whole thing brought up to the court, how did they make it public?
And I just want to add, maybe you can talk something about the books and the documentaries.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
The
Yeah.
That's why STS is in it.
Yeah.
Active actors in it.
Yes, we did books, we did academic articles, we did all kinds of things. Yeah, so
We have documentary.
we have documentary and
We publish books on the oral history of this worker.
Yeah, we have a song.
And we have
And
songs.
two songs actually.
We have a song.
We sang our song right in front of the court.
This morning.
Not this morning. Back in 2015.
Yeah.
Oh, so this morning it was with the lawyers.
Oh yeah, it was another story.
This is
It
another
was
story.
ongoing.
That's another one.
Yeah.
No, this is secret meeting. You're not supposed to.
So, Professor, then now we can move in a very important aspect. This is there are two things I want to say. One of them is that we realize when we take controversy about health questions and social questions and working and company, how equipped we are to deal with it in many ways. I mean, we sort of know what is an expert witness is. There's a whole elaborated legal system. The media sort of know what I mean. Probably you didn't mention it, but the union must have played a role in that.
No.
Ah, right.
No, but labor activists.
Labor activists,
But not the union.
not union per se, but labor movement activists.
Compared to the case of a coral reef we mentioned we had before, where we realize that every time we begin to enter into those questions of when climate change as a sort of institution, which is the COP, that we see how little interest it triggers compared to the question of health.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
actually, the people I'm studying, the critical zone observatory scientists, they always compare with health.
Yeah.
They say, look, everyone who goes into intensive care unit in a hospital, immediately there are hundreds of instruments to analyze it. And we who study soil and rivers and so on, we have a few very preliminary data and no equipment and no cheap equipment and no people communicating.
Yeah.
So this is a very important lesson for us because one of the goals is of course that every issue like that of a coral reef and all of the many others be treated with the same equipment, complex legal technology and media equipment than this one. So that's the first point. The second point is, you mentioned the first day, yesterday, your simulation with officials.
Oh yes, yes.
Now, suppose because here we are three specialists of that example, right?
Yes.
If you had to organize, popularize, dramatize this case for visitors of a show, who would play the different media role, STS role, volunteers role, etc., how would you do it?
How will we do it?
And what sort of document would you have to prepare for people to enter into a stage discussion, knowing that probably every one of the visitors know about the story somehow.
Yeah, actually, it's extremely difficult to represent it artistically because the whole thing play out during a 30-year time span. And the interesting thing about court proceeding in Taiwan, and I don't know, maybe in France it's the same because the same tradition, the civil law tradition, is that everything goes very slowly, so there's no drama.
Just this story, right?
Yeah, and it is not, the debate is not going on, but the debate is going on in a very slow pace, so you need the time-lapse machine to make it visible.
So is there anything, say, like to make things public relate to something about time? And
Yes.
about the reason, because people forget things, right?
Right.
So interesting, like to trust in, say, like how much you can remember and when to know the place where we can start activities. So is there any like stories about that? Say like the court or some party just tend to change the reason or place so that can make people sort of lost in the tracks or say like fail to follow it.
Yes, but Professor, you said that to train officials.
Yeah.
So imagine you have to train, I don't know, 30 people who have subscribed
Yeah.
to one of the events of a show in 1 year.
Yeah. Yeah.
You-
So you have to.
How would you do this? Suppose there are people who know a bit about this thing, but they've never been in the shoes of a
Another person.
RCA
Yeah.
CEO,
Yeah.
or not in the shoes of a, I have no idea what it is, DVAPL thing.
Yeah. It's called Biennial.
Would you be ready to do it?
Well, I can play Biennial, all right. but
So that's basically the direction we try to get in, which is very interesting controversies, a lot of interesting role playing, lots of actually underground, I mean all of that could be pushed in many different ways.
Yeah.
But we also have to make people enter into this discussion. So
Yes.
we know how to do them in STS terms, but
Yeah.
what would it be if you had to use it as a training example, so to speak?
Yeah.
A case study, basically.
Usually this kind of lawsuit it's a terribly beat up genre in Hollywood movie. You have courtroom drama, you have heroic lawyer, and you have the breaking up point that the villain says, yes, I did murder her. This kind of thing doesn't happen here. Yeah, and I don't think it's a good idea to dramatize that way either.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
But how did you did with your official?
How do I let my class of officials play out this?
Do you make them play the role of a bad guy? Or?
Yeah, they can play GE, they can play
Yes.
Technicolor,
Yeah,
they can
they-
play workers,
Yeah,
they can play residents.
residents.
There are many different,
Yeah, lawyers on both sides. Yes.
or scientists from both sides.
Yeah.
I'm sure the Taiwanese are like students, are like our students in Europe. We love to play those games.
Yeah.
They immediately began to look like, if you ask someone to be the president of the RCA, in Europe at least, you immediately play the role of a tough guys. And,
Yeah.
it's a bit exaggerated, but sometimes it can become very interesting.
Yeah, because there are really very interesting subplots inside this. For instance, like the company's expert witness, they don't really testify that the harm did not happen. They don't testify that nobody got cancer. They are just saying that, well, I cannot see it. And I'm a qualified expert, but even qualified expert like myself cannot see it. So I was think it doesn't exist. So that's a more nuanced way of lying. They don't really tell lies, but they tell things as half truth. And that's a typical issue in science in the courtroom. And the scientist for the PowerPoint side is always playing this kind of game. And it is, I think it's useful to explain this, but people who have little attention span will have a hard time understanding the dynamics.
But we have video. We have documentary.
We have a
explaining
documentary.
all
We
the
have a
complexity.
50-minute documentary explaining a scientific issue and social issue.
There's a film.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
48 minutes.
So that's a good case, very good case where we have lots of material, pedagogical material.
Yeah.
You use it for your class or something like that.
Yeah,
You use it already to teach students.
And we use that the video, present the video as a science education project.
Okay.
Not the social justice project per se, but science education.
Is there a good thing, by the way, on the tourist destruction, eco-tourist destruction of coral reef? A documentary.
Oh, there are videos on that kind of thing happening in Biennial. There are many places.
Good. Well, thank you very much. It was a second case. Of course, we could spend several years, and you spent several years studying it. So there are lots of subplots that we. Humans, unfortunately, are just as complex as corals. So, I mean, this is why we always have. So, we are approaching the end of this exercise. We are approaching the end of this exercise. I think you got enough of a spirit of our enterprise to begin. I think we now should a round table so that everyone can express oneself. Not so much about, let's say, the general framework, because the framework will change over time anyway. And as usual, it's not the conceptual argument that's so important, but in which way you think it's feasible with the example you have already in stores, or eventually some of the cases you know could be used. I mean, yesterday we made the first round of many of the issues in which you have been engaged as examples, but now we have to be more precise. Knowing that we have 1 year to prepare, how would you enter this amount of work with the sort of proviso that we do exactly what you just did, that is, you have a study you know very well, you teach students with it already. Let's imagine another step where it's brought to the attention of people, and we don't know yet how, in the show, during the show. We don't know if it will be workshop or simulation, it doesn't matter. What sort of topic, what sort of resources you want to bring in. Very important if they are film, not film, documentary, etc. Especially important PhD students who are ready to work for it. After all, the whole science industry works with PhDs working for us. Well, not for retired people, unfortunately. That sort of thing. So we have some ideas about the next step. Then there is another point, which is how the museum will deal with the organizing during the year, but that's a topic for us and Director Lin, and that's another question. And of course the other question is how do we stage it, but we are not there yet. To underline that it's fairly rare for exhibition, art exhibition, to be prepared a year in advance with people interested in it already. I mean, this is not the usual way, so it's great that the museum accepts to sort of prepare in some ways. Is this okay? Do we do a round table? Right?
Can I add something?
Yes, Lynn.
We have a new actor here. The
Sorry?
photographer's father worked in the RCA company from 1975 to 1976. He has his father's Japanese certificate.
I didn't get it. Ah! But this is a very unusual photograph because he took a photograph of us this morning and look at his t-shirt. Look at his t-shirt. It's a t-shirt that makes us smile just at the right moment when he takes pictures. Release certificate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just asked him.
76.
I see. Well, that's okay. Sorry.
We have more than 80,000 people who is working in the company.
So lots of kids.
Yeah. So I bump into, former
So a lot of people in Taiwan knows about it.
Yes.
So shall we start a round table?
Peut-être dans l'ordre que les gens veulent, maybe.
The
other that people want, maybe like a busy.
because everyone, because I don't want to stress to you too much. But at some point you will have to work. I mean, if you accept to do it. Go ahead.
Wait, no, maybe it work, but of course I re-stress 3 points which are important. The first one is that a subject you're comfortable with. The second one is that there's plenty of way to integrate that into the work you're already doing. We have a year in advance, so it's very possible to integrate it with your university curricular, maybe, to integrate it within some sort of conferences and publication patterns, etc. We can think about all these things. Like, let's not think that we need to start everything from scratch. It needs to be from your own network, your own point of interest. And the last thing is, like, I think you all understand that by making an art, by being an art in an institution, we don't ask people to necessarily get to produce an artwork. It can be a talk within that context, a workshop within this context, a simulation. It's not, we don't have to be overwhelmed by the institution which is hosting us. We just have to take it as the most flexible institution, platform that we can possibly work with, which means we can work with our students, or your students, or civil servants if you want, or any person that you think is ready to commit.
I understood you said we don't have to do an opera.
Yeah, then I have to do an opera.
Okay, good. I thought we had, I'm sorry. So you don't have to do an opera with song and choir. This is very reassuring, so you can feel good. Okay, who wants to start? It's not a pledge. I mean, you can withdraw afterwards. But right now, what will be your poll?
Just to start.
Push your button. Push your red button.
I'm sorry. Yeah, but it would be easier to draw.
Ah, okay.
I'm not good at talking anyway, so I prefer drawing. So it's good to have this. Actually, this is not my idea. It's we had an email this afternoon from a friend of the labor group, a labor activist involved in the RCA case, which reminded me of of an exhibition which was a very small exhibition organized in Taoyuan, so in the place of the...
You raise the whole tall reefs.
No, but exactly. That's why I mentioned this case. So, you know the airport. You have been to the airport. So in Taoyuan Airport, not far, you have the RCA factory. Well, now the factory is no more there. So it's a huge field with residency buildings over there, and the underground soil is still polluted, right? And then you have the coast with the data, with the corals, the algae, not far. So actually, our friends, the labor activists, are supportive of the movement in data. Yeah. So because of these community links in Taoyuan. So now the,
So the two cases were actually related.
yes,
Yeah.
actually,
How-
geographically speaking, yes, they are, and also by some people are involved in. I mean,
Good,
the
that's good.
supporters
Yeah,
here.
very good for the map, the new map of Taiwan we want to do.
Yeah, and so this little exhibit by an artist, her name is Li Hui, Huang Li Hui. She's near the factory in the office of the former RCA workers. They have an association which to organize the plaintiffs, and so I will explain simply. It's like a chess. It's called Reversi. I don't know if you're familiar with. It's a game, and when you she invites the visitors. If you have work in the RCA factory, you are a black.
Black and white.
Yeah, you have.
Weiqi, Go. The English name is Go. G-O.
Go.
Go.
Oh, go. Okay.
Go.
So for the workers, and if you are non-workers, it's white. And then you are invited to play, to choose where you want to put your stone. Yeah. So here, if you are I was non-worker, so I choose this place, and another non-worker, and then depending from where you come from, France or the United States or which part from Taiwan, she will report on the wall. She will take a picture of you, and she will report your, comment on dit la silhouette en anglais? Silhouette. The silhouette. And then she will interview you with a camera, and then your story, how do you feel about this, your own interpretation of the whole story. How you understand all this will be recorded and put on Facebook and share with other persons.
But who tells the story for that?
You?
If you come as a tourist from France.
Yeah.
So
So
how do you know?
if you are non-workers, you're here, and if you are among those 80,000 workers, you will be a black person. So
There's only two categories.
yeah, only two
But
categories.
if you're white, if you're non-worker, then what is the interview questions she asks to you?
This is where I forgot. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think.
But more or less, you have an idea of the.
But you didn't say what you are going to do for here. How would you mobilize your students? What sort of case you would choose this case? If you had to choose.
I don't know. Maybe I don't have students, so I don't know. I only have 2 assistants. That's not enough.
Sinica has no students, I think, for the training.
No, Sinica is big, so it's all independent people. Maybe his lab doesn't have.
Do you have the artist name for us?
黄丽
黄丽
慧，
慧
黄丽慧。
我已经把资料交给马当。
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got information.
So, who wants to go on with
Yeah.
it?
So if
But we have only Antonio.
it's possible, like because they are related, and the big group of scientists and volunteers and the stakeholders and whoever is interested in that location are working from last 2 years or 3 years to both educate people and also try to inform government and educate government about the destruction of that algal reef by construction of the Chinese Petroleum Corporation thing. So if it is possible, like my idea is I can organize the whole story by bringing all the resources we have had from last 2 years. Like we have videography, we have photography, we have had different people have made some art kind of things to depict what's happening, or people to talk about how they try to connect the government with the problem, still they couldn't because of what problem they faced in this process. and how really the situation can change from good to bad, or even if there is a lot of scientific support and people support, still the government doesn't listen. So this can be done by bringing the people who are involved in that process of 2 years or 3 years here, right here, and then ask them to interact with the public.
Well, that's an excellent proposition.
What about the tourists? Can you bring the tourists? Because in Datang, it's not like Bintong and Ken.
Yeah, but Datang tourists don't go. The only people go there are like now, because once the local people realize, I was talking to Chahuan, so saying that there are many NGOs and also local city high schools and primary schools. They take students to show them like, look, what's there and what will happen in the future because of the construction. So this kind of thing I can bring here and then let them interact with people.
So, we have to turn around the table, I think.
I'm interested in wastes.
然后这里面有2种，一种是工厂的废弃物，一种是我们生活的废弃物。
Specifically factory wastes and wastes from people's daily life.
在我们上一场的展览里面，其中有一个台湾最毒皮糖，在这边。
Actually, in the last biennial, there is an artwork about the most poisonous pond in Taiwan, and that is exactly in Taoyuan.
三枚皮。
圣梅胖。
它也是工业所产生的废水，然后排到了灌溉的皮塘，污染了农田。
So why is it that poisonous? Because industrial wastewater was released into this pond, and this pond was used to irrigate farmland.
所以这个跟 RCA 也有某一些接近，然后这个跟珊瑚也会有一些关联，因为但我们知道有很多废水排到海洋之后，其实对海洋生物是另外一个很大的伤害。
And the topic that I'm raising has something to do with the RCA case and with the coral reef case, because as the water eventually goes to the ocean, it pollutes coral reef as well.
从这边可以去引申出所谓的工业废弃物这一块。
So that's why I think, for me, industrial waste is a good topic.
到土壤污染跟粮食生产。
And it can even be expanded to soil pollution, food production, and so on.
另外一个是我们日常生活自己会产生的垃圾。
And moving on to another type of waste, which is our daily waste.
现在全世界都在讲要减废、减塑，减少废弃物、减少塑胶。
So, the global trend right now is reducing wastes and reducing plastic.
或许我们把这个部分浓缩成减少使用塑胶袋。
So maybe we can just exemplify this issue by simply saying reduce using plastic bags.
因为光一个塑胶袋的问题，它就可以延伸出非常多的可能性。
Because this small issue, plastic bag, can be expanded to a very big topic.
我在上课的时候会把这个议题丢给学生，让他们去思考。
So this is how I would teach my students. I will use a small example like this and encourage them to think.
例如，你不要用，做不做得到？
So I will ask them, push them questions like, can you do it? Can you stop using this?
答案是 no。
And of course the answer is no.
所以我们就会把它转换成好，如果我要用，但是我又想要减塑，那我有没有其他的方法？
And at this point, my next question for my students would be, if you can't say no, but you want to reduce plastic, what should you do then?
或者我们来做一个实验，我一个礼拜都不要用到塑胶袋，有没有可能？
And then I will ask them, maybe you can do an experiment. Try not using plastic bag for an entire week.
大部分时间我是让他们直接在课堂上马上回应我。
Usually, I will ask them to answer me directly in the classroom.
绝大部分也是 no。
And of course, most students will say they can't do it. They cannot avoid plastic bag for an entire week.
那我就让他再简单一点，我们一天不要用，能不能？
Then I will ask a further question. Then can you avoid it for one day?
OK， 耶、
And then they will say yes.
好，包括我自己现在在实验，一种模式，例如我还是会用到塑胶袋，但是我不要制造塑胶袋的垃圾，所以我可能是采例如重复使用。然后我在实验一种行为，就是如果我做得到的话，那样也许别人也做得到，它不会影响我的生活，但是我却可以减少废弃物。
So, right now, I myself am experimenting. I'm still using plastic bag. I cannot avoid it, but I can reuse it. So on here is a mark. Every stroke
例如
means
这个袋子，
I use it
我
once.
因为随身带的这一个重复使用，我已经减少了40个塑胶
That's the
袋。
number of times you use it.
40 times.
40 times.
Good. So instead of a
这是一个很简单的
number
习
you
惯
can.。
Yeah, every stroke means I use it once. And so for me, I'm doing a behavioral experiment myself. So if I can succeed, I can encourage other people to try it.
所以我觉得在艺术的这个领域，它其实是包括像刚刚 RCA 来讲，我觉得其实我们呈现的是一个事件或一个事情的现象，它没有一定的答案。我觉得我们有很多的答案，有很多的想象，但是我觉得在这边也许我们可以呈现一个事件，它在此时此刻，或者说在那个时期，它这个事件它怎么发生？
So if we want to make a bridge between the events like this or the issues that we care about and art, then maybe take RCA for example, we can try to capture the essence of the event, the phenomenon around the event, how it happened, not necessarily presenting any specific views.
包括早教在内，我们就是让参观者很直接的面对事实这一个现象，然后也许我觉得我们就是要让他们面对这些事情。那这里面我会想到我们小时候玩的一种游戏，大富翁。
So the Datan case is the same. I think we can try to present them the facts, push the facts there in front of them. And I think how can we do that? We can play Fortune, a board game. Monopoly, sorry.
它里面会有2个很重要的元素，一个叫做机会，一个叫做选择。
If you remember, in Monopoly, there are 2 big elements. One is opportunity, another one is choice.
这2样东西会是一起的，因为我觉得可以让参与者他选择这个东西去思考，面对这些事情。当然，他不一定可以解决问题，但是他要去面对这些事情。
So, and as you know, in Monopoly, opportunity and choices are inseparable. So maybe we can encourage visitors to play the game and see how the event play out. We're forcing the visitors, the player, to make conscious decisions, to make choices around this event.
我觉得在美术馆是一个蛮好的机会，就这样。
And I think that's a great way. I mean, I think museum is a great space to try something like this. Thank you.
Mali was telling me that she's inventing a system so that our students are actually colored in red or blue or green, depending on the pollution. So you can imagine visitors are equipped with sensors with a plastic bag, with the date of a plastic bag, colored with, and just a few of the other instruments, because we need many, many more instruments with sensors to make ourselves, including our CO2 footprint, so to speak. Good, thank you very much. So who else want to contribute in some ways? Yes? Professor Wu?
Yeah, I think I'd like to mention like several things. One thing that I think we can contribute as STS community is that we have we just kind of publish documentaries, a series of documentaries called Open S-File in Social Controversies. So I think it's kind of match the thing here, and this S means science. So is talking about kind of analyze the social controversy with different scientific perspective. I mean the mainstream scientific perspective. Yeah. So I think that documentaries including several very important issues in Taiwan like RCA or the petrochemical pollutions, like the gas explosion from underground in Kaohsiung. 2014, and also I think it's wind power, the controversies of the health impact of wind power, and also the electronic waste. Yeah.
Also bird flu.
Bird flu. Yeah. Bird flu, and also data, big data, big data. So I think total there are 7 topics, but
with films.
With films.
Were they shown already in your Biennial?
No, because our film series by the environmental activists. But I think the films from you.
Yeah. It's more like a popular science film, but from STS perspective.
It can also be used maybe as a document to train people rather than thinking that that they're going to be shown in the museum and that people will learn and then act. Let's take another perspective of saying let's use them to train a community of people before they simulate so that they prepare their role and they start to understand.
I think that's possible. I don't know if that. I think from
we can invite the producer and the directors of these films to come and workshop with prospective documentary makers to share the process, because unlike most documentary in Taiwan are very often independent production, this series is done by a commercial production company, which is different context, and so they are different experiences. I think they might be interested in having this kind of
and they also interview a lot of people. I think in like various stakeholders. So I think that's possible. So okay, that's one thing. And the other the topic I want to raise is also related to waste, but it's a nuclear waste, as I mentioned yesterday. And I think I'm just trying to make a connection. Today we talk about the controversies of Aga Reef, and that's part of the reason is because of the we have a kind of political agenda of energy transition. That from because the people want to reduce air pollution, so they want to reduce the coal, and also the people don't want nuclear power. So that they try to kind of expand the natural gas, the usage of natural gas. So that's why they need to build up the natural gas receiving station at the site of Datan. Yeah. So okay, so that's the total issue, and the nuclear waste. It's kind of a tricky because like nuclear power plant since the issue seems over, but the nuclear waste still existing at the current power plant, and some of the low level radioactive waste is in Oki Island. which is the
Beautiful
yeah. Also
So it is
related to
coral
coral reef. Yeah.
Very beautiful. It was a beautiful coral reef area.
They might love radioactivity.
No, but actually, I mean, the
Yeah.
nuclear waste offer natural protection because nobody wants to go there. So
Yeah.
basically, the
It's actually saving
Oh,
the
so it's
tourism,
so-
not tourism there.
Yeah, so it's very ironic.
Yes, great.
That's a great twist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So actually the coral reefs are actually protected.
So does it mean that we need
No,
to, you know,
it
like
would
keep
be it would be interesting to bring that controversy because
Yeah.
the Lanyo, the Orchid Island, is Aboriginal people.
yeah.
So the Aboriginal people are affected by long-term radioactive waste being dumped there,
Mhm.
and also coral reef being present there, which will also have health effect for the coral reef.
Yeah, so yeah, it's very complicated. Anyway, I think it's a good case because the nuclear waste issue, I think it's talking about like after we, you know, that we are done with the nuclear power plant, but we still have the problems that will last maybe forever. I mean, at least, you know, like several hundred or 1,000 years.
Yeah, millions of years even.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think recently there's also a news about the Japanese government is going to kind of discharge the radioactive water
Oh yeah.
from the
Fukushima.
storage tank after the Fukushima
Yeah.
incident. So you know, people are worried about the ocean, the pollution in ocean, but this kind of pollution is invisible. But you can see the change of the environment or biodiversity. So I'm just thinking if we can, you know, like bring this kind of issue because I think because of Oki Island, there's a lot of activities, kind of protesting activities, which were kind of well documented in the past, and also because of the decommissioning of the nuclear power plants in Taiwan, and we are going to have a lot of the high-level radioactive waste, and which we haven't found the site, or we haven't found the method to properly
No one else.
No one has found it.
yeah, so
Even France has
so
it.
but that's the problem that means that, you know, like you have an energy problem, but you also have the waste problem. So I think that would be, you know, the topic for people to think about, you know, how we use energy today and how we will deal with the waste.
And it's a topic that interests everyone.
Yeah, and coral reef.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
And the nuclear waste in the US is the greatest biodiversity land, the big thing. Is it in Arizona?
Yeah.
Because it has not been touched by humans since the 50s. So it is one of the many paradoxes of the world we live in. Good. So we already have several. Can you what all the other cases we saw yesterday? Pardon? What do you want to speak?
Okay. I think the cases just talk too concrete, so it's hard to find another comparable cases in Taiwan. But I have, in fact, I was trained as an electronic engineer before becoming sociologist. So a lot of my classmates now working in the Hsinchu Science Park. So I think it's the second episode of the RCA case. But in fact, when the RCA built the factory there, almost at the same time, our government bought technology from RCA to create domestic semiconductor industry. And they also create an area in the Hsinchu region as a science park. At that time, it was very novel idea because there was no other countries that such kind of facility or infrastructure back then. But sooner or later, that place became very populated. A lot of engineers, a lot of companies established there. So they need water, they need space, they need electric power to sustain the industry. And so now we have the Hsinchu region and also in the Miaoli. It's just in the south of Taoyuan. So it's the second, I think the second episode just for the human ecology. So that's another problem, but it's not that obvious because the Hsinchu Science Park contributes a large part of the Taiwanese economy. So always we praise, we think it's a very good idea. It's a very successful story. It's a part of the Taiwanese magic or something like that, the miracle, something like that. Yeah. But in fact, that region, there are a lot of problems, but never seen. Among my classmates working in Science Park, they are not aware of this. They are almost in their own planet. They enjoy their successful history, and also I think in the Taiwanese society, to become an engineer, to work in the science park is something very successful. So it also makes some different kinds of value about what is a successful life or something like that. So I think that it may also be another story, just following the RCA, but it's not that obvious, not that visible to the society. And there are also the third episode of the RCA story. Because at the time when the science park was established and the semiconductor industry was very successful, our government want to reproduce this model to create the biomedical industry, also in the science park. At the beginning, they chose the vaccine industry because it's a very, there are a lot of markets, it's a very big market. But that is not that successful. And finally, the vaccine company fall, and the company, the facility was bought by the electronic company, another company. So till now, we have only one vaccine producer in Taiwan, and most of our vaccine are imported. So that many different story, but true vaccines is another story. It's something like I don't know if it's good or not to say that we pollute our body by the virus. So it's another network. The virus from abroad enter our body and diffuse among our population. And behind the vaccine industry, there are lots of there's a big global economy, the vaccine producer. I don't know if it's necessary or not, especially the very expensive vaccine. And for this kind of products, our government was very favorable, and we use a lot of money to buy this kind of vaccines, and at the same time, other ways of preventive dispositives are excluded. So that's another story. So I think following the case of RCA, geographically and industry and something, there will be a second or third episode going on.
Vaccine is very good. I think the western coast of Taiwan, where I think
presentation was about the science part, the dark side of the Hsinchu science part. So I think that before I think the government really want to kind of foster the Silicon Island. And of course they know the pollution, so they said it's a green Silicon Island. Yeah, so I think we still have this kind of technology clusters in Taiwan, in different parts of Taiwan, and I think that's probably the one thing that we may focus because it's a major industry here.
You see how that could shape into a very specific topic of mapping out which actors are doing what and trying to work on this specific issue. Yes.
Wait, we have a few more minutes, probably 4 minutes for you. But I'm going to start a new topic, so we can finish yours first.
No, please.
Okay, so because I found that because I just read the last one of the Taipei Biennial as a post and nature, right? They found some of the things related to the environment. So I somehow think like this time maybe we should add something new. And yeah, so that's why I want to bring more. Humbly bring my case. That may be not so directly related to environment, but it's very East Asia or Taiwan. That's a traditional medicine. I would like to say it's a controversies, but controversy in different level. So I would like to call it, it's just a tentative title, but I say like we're living in a different planet in traditional medicine. Well, the reason why I say that just because there are several things related to some medical beliefs here. For example, like medicine and food come from the same origin. We call it 衣食同源. But it's in terms of the environment, that developed some interesting controversies. Say like whether you want the purest food, medicine, or you want authentic medicine or food. I already said that yesterday by saying like some authentic drug, not necessarily pure. If you want to say like you want to find place, you want to exactly the medicinal plants growing there, they are not necessarily pure. But somehow you had to believe say like the medicine should be pure. So it's a tension that from the production side or consumer side, say like whether still is the same origin. If you have some idea about food, what is the idea about medicine? So this is one of the beliefs they say that. Second one is also a belief here. We call this everything is toxic. 万物皆毒说. This is old belief. Say like even in the traditional medicine, everything considered as toxic. But toxic means say like they give some cure. So it's always a controversy about like in the name of traditional medicine, what is the cure, what is toxic? And you bring to the different level by saying, say like, how to discuss the treatment without any like kind of invasive of some toxicity involved in it. I mean, toxic means it's also in the Western medicine in Middle Ages that you need something toxic in order to balance yourself, right? That is the way there's a conversation between human beings and nature. But how come in the modernity, scheme of modernity, toxic can be like, that sort of the risks like you have to avoid all the time. And that just violates the idea that, okay, we call the biomedicine is toxic. And we then just say how to explain. Say like even the traditional medicine in Taiwan also believe everything, including medicine and food, can be toxic. These are all the one of the beliefs. And the third one is osmoral, called the natural drugs. So our drug come from natural product, 天然药物. If it's a drug, it has to be artificial. It cannot be natural. How can you explain, say like just what Zhongwen said? It said to where that the metal, the money come from it, because of the biotechnology, just like a modern magician, they will say like, we can make the impossible things possible because we make us more in a natural thing. Because we come from Asia, we know the traditional medicine, so we can make natural drugs. So I think that is also controversy, say like how to define the drug that is natural. That's this idea.
We have a few more minutes, so I think. So I have sorry,
He wants to finish.
Mr. Chen wanted to speak before.
Yeah, I have two concrete ideas. One is about semiconductor industry. The sister campaign of RCA campaign is the Samsung semiconductor workers, Samsung leukemia campaign in South Korea. And they have been undergoing very different fate, and because Samsung is still the most powerful corporation in South Korea. So in fighting against Samsung to recognize the disease, occupational disease of workers, they were really, they have been through hell for the past 10 years. And one of the interesting things they do is that they, in a stalemate, they sit in front of the headquarters of Samsung Electronics for 3.5 years. And some of the activists are really artistic. So their sit inside is built into a wonderful installation art site, and then people keep coming in and keep changing the decoration. And eventually their case is solved because they are because of political the political change. So finally, the young boss of Samsung become because of bribery to the former president, South Korean president's friends or so on. So eventually, their artistic installation helped their case, and I think it's a wonderful case to bring it here because as Stoneman says that what happened in the semiconductor plant is invisible. It's totally blocked out from outside. So that is one single case I know that people have been doing. And the second suggestion is that talking about Datan, back in 1980s, there was a series of photojournalist work on Datan village, especially the cadmium rice case. The photographer was Cai Minghe, and he's a drinking buddy of mine. And I know he has hundreds more pictures of film still in his home, and he's thinking about maybe have a more comprehensive show of everything, because at the time maybe only 24 pictures were shown on the magazine or so. So it will be a very interesting historical connection between Datan at the time and Datan before that, and then the agro reef issue now.
Okay. Well, we are coming to the end.
Maybe Professor Wu. Yesterday you were talking. Very briefly. Yesterday you were talking about issues of sports, pollution, the coast, etc.
Right. Yeah, I have two proposals, but I didn't know that we have to be kind of stage that, so I feel the panic. But I just share like ideas.
No, and anyway, it's the time.
What about running from here to Taoyuan?
I feel strongly that we should bring back the weather knowledge in this Taipei Biennial, because Taiwan is famous for typhoon, earthquake, but the knowledge making is terrible, so we don't become experts of typhoons and earthquake, even though we experience that so much. I think part of the reason is that the Weather Bureau produces the knowledge so badly. For example, the Morocco typhoon, which happened 10 years ago, hit the south part of Taiwan badly because the prediction of typhoon is always in a circle and emphasizing the wind, not the rain. So the southern part of Taiwan didn't have the typhoon, the circle at all, but it rained heavily, so that's why it produced the damage. But the local people know very well. For example, the weather information is produced based on the administrative areas. But if you live in a village, you know that you need the information behind the mountains, because even though you don't rain, the rain you might get flood because the rain will flow with the river. But our bureau, weather bureau, does not produce that kind of information. So anyway, I think we should challenge that kind of weather information. But there are some, like Aboriginal people, they have their way of producing the weather and feel the weather. And there are some lay experts, like a Facebook owner, the 天气即时预报, my favorite one, I'm a big fan of the weather. They produce the kind of information you feel strongly with the planet. For example, they told you why you feel the autumn is coming, because there's a lower pressure in Japan Sea. So you immediately feel connected with something in the other side of the earth. So they have a very effective way to tell us the relationship between us and the weather. So as a kind of consultant to the disaster prevention bureau, I told them that we should consult this kind of lay expert. But they say according to law, only the weather bureau can offer the official knowledge. So I think this is wrong, but how to make it an issue which is important. And for example, I emphasize Runner. I think why Runner doesn't feel the weather so strongly is because we are not mobilized to use our sensors. All kinds of new technology to track your heartbeats or to record your running records. All emphasize your own, like one person is like one system, but they don't use some ways to make you connect with the wind, with the river and trees you run through. So I feel like we should organize a marathon which aim to connect to the earth, for example. Not to just have the speed competition. So maybe we can run through the Taipei Museum and to feel the wind and at that time it's a marathon season. It happens to be a marathon season. And we have this farming problems, 低头族. Like this means that you give me a smartphone, you can have the world. But that's all within the human-centered world. So I think you can bubbles, right? Bubbles. So there should be other communication skill that we feel strongly to connect with the nature. So in your question too, is like how to draw attention to some issues like coral. There's no spokesperson of coral, so people can feel like passionately. But all the media attention is like some big entertainment star far away in another country, and people can devote their energy and passion so much in the remote things. So it's possible to make connection, but we need some innovative ways. So I don't have time, but the second one is about Donna Haraway's population policy. Like I think in our book we mentioned that we need to have this kind of to remake the demography, to calculate demography, and to incorporate the ecology. So nowadays demography only counts human beings, not about land and environment. But there are some demography which take that into consideration, but not in Taiwan. So I think we should have that kind of new demography in order to rethink about our low fertility problems. But because you mentioned that what's our group or our resources, I have a group called a Birth Reform Alliance, but the agenda is to give birth with power. And I'm writing a book about making multiple babies. So it seems to be contradictory with the issues about to make too much population might be problematic to the earth. So I'm still thinking about that. But in Taiwan's context, if we can bring in the low fertility issues with the environmental perspectives, that would be great. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
So yeah, I think we've gone through a lot of very interesting propositions, and again, thank you so much for all this material, the next step, of course, is like there's going to be quite a lot of work on our side to see how we could build something, but it's really important that those issues that you have at heart, we can find means of connecting them with the biennial through ways where we shift from something that we should do, some sort of ideal that we should reach, to a very concrete description of the situation and all of the stakeholders who are at play. I think that if there is one style that we want to promote, is this one. It's a description rather than specific description rather than, let's say, communication. We're going to try to, before we communicate, that comes in the second step, let's re-describe everything. Let's reopen that. Let's involve people in that description process and let's see what happens. And I think that can be an extremely productive move for all of us who have are used to communicate, and in the end we communicate so often about the issues that we end up by losing the what makes it come together. So.
Thank you to all. Thank you to Director Lin and the museum and the staff for housing us.